Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode, yes, of the Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by the best heart health supplement in the world if you're looking to lower that resting heart rate, lower your blood pressure while improving your pump at the gym. Stick around. We'll talk about that more later in today's episode. But first, we're digging into all things externalities. We're actually kind of piggybacking on the conversation we had with Ian Golan, but we're going to be looking laser focused today on what's happening with regards to Zyn, which are the new nicotine pouches out there as an alternative to cigarettes. We see this right now. This is then the war against vaping. You know, it's evil. It's bad for you. While at the same point in time, more and more folks are going towards vapes as alternatives to cigarettes. So why? Why does the government feel it necessary to, I don't know, go out and restrict our choices, especially when those choices are safer than other options on the market that are immeasurably worse for us? Let's discuss that all and more. Digging into that is Sophia Hamilton. Sophia, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very excited to talk about all things health, all things nicotine, Zyn, tobacco, vapes, anything in the nicotine world.
Love it. Well, and by the way, folks, peek behind the curtain. Sophia's been a good sport because I've had to restart my computer here because my computer decided to just crash as we were getting ready to start today. I guess that's what happens when we have 103 heat index here. My computer's running at a toasty 160 degrees. I'm trying to get it cooled down, but you know, something's happening behind the scenes there. But regardless, nobody cares about my technical woes. Sophia, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience and your role over at Young Voices.
Yeah, so in my day job, I am a health policy analyst and I moonlight as a harm reduction fellow with Young Voices. And so I write on all things drug policy and trying to get government barriers out of the way to get people to good quality products and treatment so that they can live healthier lives. And a lot of my writing and media focuses on tobacco and nicotine policy, not because I'm a huge supporter of those products, but because there's a huge attack on tobacco and nicotine right now at the federal, state, and even some local levels. And so it's become incredibly important for me to move away from opioid policy, which is where I got my start in drug policy, to tobacco and nicotine, because this is affecting so many people in so many markets around the country. And the government just is continually failing to promote good policies.
So let's set the stage here. What is the argument, I guess, right? Because we see as the market does what the market does, we have alternatives enter into the marketplace, whether it's a better solution, it's a less risky solution, whatever that may be. You see alternatives. We saw this, over the past 10, 15 years. Vaping became more and more accessible. Lots of folks started leaving the traditional cigarette that we all have come to know and hate. I think back to the truth.org commercials where they had the guy who had the little thing in his throat. He's like, this is what happens when you smoke cigarettes for 40 years. And he can't talk anymore because his voice box got cut out, right? So you see there was a push to get away from cigarettes. And now you see younger folk, I'm going to say younger Gen, or rather older Gen Z, younger millennials, they started to leverage vaping as an alternative, but maybe there were still some issues there. Okay, let's give them that argument. And then you have Zyn pouches, right? Zyn pouches, which are literally just these little pouches of nicotine. Folks, put them in their lip. They have it there for a little bit. Gives them that little extra oomph, nicotine zap for energy or focus. And now those are under attack. So Sophia, help us understand here. Why is the government so hell-bent on trying to, I don't want to say get rid of our ability to have fun, because that's not it, but actually get rid of our ability to make real choices that are best for ourselves?
Well, you kind of started summing up the problem here. So first we had cigarettes, widespread use of cigarettes, and we realized, these aren't very good for our health. And so we had alternatives like e-cigarettes and vapes. And then that started to become very popular with younger crowds. Definitely we were seeing teenagers under 18 years old using these products in greater numbers. And that sparked a lot of panic because we thought we were going to have this smoke-free generation. So the government really came down hard on Juul, which was the biggest vape company in, it happened around 2018.
Yep.
So the federal government kind of used them as an example, got Juul totally off of the market. That's what everyone wanted. Everyone loved those mango Juul pods. And so then there was a huge empty spot in the market. And you know what filled that? Disposable vapes. Those came on the market. None of those were regulated by the FDA, which no consumer really knows. You can ask any person you know with a vape. They are not aware that what they are smoking, those geek bars, cloud bars, puff bars, whatever they are that they're getting from the corner store gas stations, those aren't regulated. And you don't really know what's in them because they're not regulated by the FDA. I'm not a huge proponent for the FDA. I don't think they do a great job, but all of these products are coming in illegally from China. The FDA is telling distributors to stop selling them, and consumers are using them unknowingly. So as part of this like empty market share that was left by Juul, Zyn products, nicotine pouches, have grown in popularity, and they are honestly one of the best products on the market when it comes to nicotine, especially in the smokeless nicotine space. And they've grown in popularity. They've been on the American market for 10 years. They've been in Europe in their current form for decades, but in some certain form for centuries. They've been used, products like nicotine pouches, they were obviously very different hundreds of years ago, have been used since
they didn't have Zyn back in 1865. Sorry.
I know. So Zyn became a brand in like the early 2000s, but they were using a product called snus, which was like ground up tobacco in pouches that you would put in your mouth. And from that we derived the nicotine pouches, which are much cleaner and less harsh on your gums and your teeth, which gum and dental health is very important. But I think there's been a lot of uptick in concern, rightfully so, from parents of teenagers, seeing the rise in popularity of nicotine pouch products with younger generations, individuals in high school, young college students. And that's really, in my mind, a conversation that has to be had in the household and managing your own children. But they're trying to kind of, I've seen some news stories where it feels like they're trying to make an example out of Zyn in the same way that they made an example out of Juul, where they see this incredibly popular product on the market and they want to get rid of it. They want to take it off the market because that will give us the smoke-free generation, the nicotine tobacco-free generation that we apparently have to have. But I think if you look back at the failed policies and failed tries at this over and over, it's pretty clear what's going to happen. We're just going to have another illicit product come onto the market that's not regulated and that isn't as good as what we had before. And so consumers will just be facing more harm than they did if the government just kept their hands off of the market.
Yeah, well, an elephant in the room. I don't see government like going after Marlboro, however you say their name. Like you don't see the government saying, okay, well, let's get rid of cigarettes first because they're objectively worse for our health, and we'll try to phase out the Zyn stuff. No, they're going after the alternatives that are, I'm going to go to, what we were just talking about here, relatively more safe, right? And I would say objectively more safe in many cases. So like, why? Why is that? Is it big tobacco? Is it lobby groups? Is it something else?
It's funny because it's hard to know why. When Biden was in office, him and Vice President Harris, their whole thing was ending the war on drugs, which the war on drugs is still happening, and tobacco and nicotine are a drug. And they went really hard after both tobacco and nicotine. They were actually going after cigarettes, which thankfully the Trump administration stopped those proposed rules from passing through the FDA. But they were trying to limit the amount of nicotine in cigarettes, get rid of all menthol flavors in cigarettes. And so consumers, again, would just be worse off and they'd be smoking more cigarettes or going to these alternative sources. So
you've spent your whole life building something meaningful, a career, a family, a legacy. But none of that matters if your health can't keep up. And the truth is, as we age, our body's natural production of nitric oxide, which is vital for circulation and heart function, declines sharply. And that drop increases your risk for high blood pressure, poor oxygen flow, and even cognitive decline. You don't feel like yourself, and no doctor seems to have an answer that doesn't involve more prescription medication. And that's why I recommend Cardio Miracle, because it's an all-in-one blend of nitric oxide boosters like L-arginine, L-citrulline, organic beets, and more that support your cardiovascular system brain function and your immune response. It's not about reversing time. It's about giving your body what it needs to keep showing up strong. You've worked too hard to feel like you're fading. So scan that little QR code over my shoulder, click the link in the show notes, or go to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS and get back in control of your health. And look for the little note saying you're shopping with Brian Nichols on the Cardio Miracle homepage. One more time, that's cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. And now, let's get back to the show.
There again, I think they really just want us to be purists. They don't want us using any sort of substance. It's funny that they're going after the one that is the least harmful. I've seen a lot of conjecture online about Zyn, about it causing gum cancer. That's something that I'm afraid of. Like I'm very health conscious. So I've looked into the research, and there's no studies that show that there's a link to oral cancer with these nicotine pouches. I even looked at the rate of oral cancers in Sweden, where Zyn was originally produced, and where most of the country, like I think something like 90% of the country of adults uses nicotine pouches. Their rates of oral cancer are lower than those in the United States. And that,
by the way, don't mean to interrupt.
Because
This kind of goes back to what Ian was saying on our last episode, how you actually see there is a collective, that's not the right word. I'm sorry. There's a relative difference in the pricing that we spend on healthcare for smokers and tobacco users and nicotine users relative to those who didn't. Now he was pointing out the difference in age, right? Like if you're an older person who hasn't smoked, chances are you're going to live longer, and therefore you're going to incur more healthcare costs. But if you're a smoker, possibly you're going to see, your life expectancy shorter. Therefore, you're going to see, less healthcare costs because you're dying younger. But what you're saying here is that actually, when you look at the details and start digging deeper, the reality is that objectively there is no real fundamental difference in terms of, in this case, oral cancer or other cancers relative to non-users.
That's kind of what it's looking like. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a healthcare provider. So I won't go too
We don't do the whole trust the experts thing here. Don't worry.
Perfect. But yeah, if you look at it, the United States has a higher rate of oral cancer than Sweden does, who's almost every adult is using this product. And there's a lot of different things that go into those rates of cancer. They probably have better healthcare in Sweden than we do. There's a lot of issues with our healthcare system. And getting access to quality care here at an affordable rate. But yeah, as Ian was saying, I'm sure in that episode, there's a lot of different costs that also incur from tobacco use. And so if we can get individuals onto a less harmful substance, that's going to save the government money in the long run. Those substances can also be taxed. I'm not a huge fan of taxes, but they're taking off a product from the market that is raising tax revenue that some states are using very wisely. I think in Florida, my home state, that goes to some education costs. I don't know if that's entirely correct. But there's ways that you can use this, these sin tax money for good programs. And you can invest it back into smoking education and smoking research and all of these different things. And if you ban the product, you're just losing out on all of that revenue, and it's going to the black market because time and time again, you'll see once we have a prohibition, people still want the product. They're still going to buy it somewhere. They're going to find a way to buy it, to use it. And now the government is the loser because they're not getting the tax revenue. They're ramping up the black market and these illicit businesses, and consumers are worse off. And so they don't know exactly what they are smoking, using, consuming, whatever it is. And that could lead to more health problems that the government is likely to be paying later on in their lives. So realistically, the government just keeps making these missteps and making it worse off for them in the future by just these same failed policies time and time again.
Government's making missteps? Say what? No, but let's just go back to the whole issue around who's really going after these alternatives? Like who has it in their heart to just be like, you know what, this 23-year-old guy who he just started smoking cigarettes with his buddies back in high school, and he's a little bit older now, and he's like, you know what, I just realized I'm not going to live forever, and I need to start maybe taking better care of myself, but oh my God, I'm addicted. Like, maybe I want to try a different alternative. Let me try a Zyn pouch instead. Like, who are the government better, do-gooders, do-betters, the Nanny State? Like, who are these folks who are saying, like, no, Johnny, you can't have that alternative that's safer for you?
A lot of it is a lot of the big Democrats, and I hate to break up and just point to one party, but it really is like Chuck Schumer came out and had a whole corny press conference last year about how bad Zyn was and how they were going to attack Zyn because at that point he had more power. And I think they're conflating it with the big tobacco of maybe the early 2000s and later on. Like they did some bad things. They were not truthful in some of their statements and testimony to Congress in saying that nicotine was not addictive. But they're going after this product that is less harmful than anything we've ever had on the market. That at worst, as far as we know now, is going to, at worst, it could cause gum irritation and stomach upset. That sounds pretty similar to what caffeine and coffee does. It's
as someone who uses coffee copiously, I can testify that is absolutely a side effect.
And it's funny because they're not even looking at the actual statistics that the government collects. We have the lowest smoking and vaping rates of adult and youth on record, historical record.
No
and
kidding.
that is never brought up. And that could be for so many different reasons of just change in generation. I know like Gen Z is really not drinking anymore and they're going to different substances or abstaining altogether.
Yep.
Or it's because we have this new product where they're not smoking, they're not vaping, they're not getting anything into their lungs, and it's really popular. It's discreet. You don't have to go outside to do it. It's just altogether a superior product than the unregulated vapes that we have on the market. I think the vapes that are regulated, like Juul, are great products, but anything else, you just don't know what you're getting. And at least these are accessible and you know that they're safe to use. Yeah.
By the way, for the audio listener, I'm sharing here on screen our episode we had last week with Krista Jones. And we were talking about how there has been an influx of users in the cannabis market. And a lot of those folks are the folks who have rejected drinking. And I was talking about, my wife and we went to this Post Malone concert back last year. And man, like I'm in my 30s and to see I was the old man at the concert really was like eye-opening. But I'll tell you what really caught me off guard was, Sophia, I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these Gen Zers drinking the same drink. I'm like, what are they drinking? Like, what is this brand? Liquid Death? What is this? And I'm thinking it's like, some new like alcohol seltzer or something. I go to the bar and I'm like, oh, can I have a water? And the guy's like, oh, you want Liquid Death? And I'm like, oh, it's a water. What? And just it caught me so off guard, but it speaks to what you're saying. And we saw the chart. I shared the chart here in the episode with Krista, but like the precipitous drop off, I think it's an 8x drop off of it was like 23 billion average users per year in the three preceding generations, Boomer, Gen X, and Millennials. And it drops down to like the low single digits for Gen Z. That for me is mind blowing because it is showing that Gen Z is looking to alternatives. Now then this comes the other question. Well, what are they replacing the bad stuff with? And there is this sentiment, and I'm going to call it boomer energy because this just seems to be a reoccurring theme. I don't mean to pick. I mean, you were talking about you didn't want to pick on a particular party. I don't mean to pick on a particular generation, but like I look around a lot of the issues we have right now. A lot of it's from the boomers, just going to say it. But there's this boomer do-good mentality, this boomer energy of saying, oh, well, tobacco and cigarettes are just bad. So anything that's in that world has to be bad too. And they just use this like, this kindergarten like logic and they apply it across the board. And oh, by the way, they have positions of power in Congress, in the cabinet, in the presidency. So you see this across the board. It is frustrating. But then I guess, we look to the market is finding a way. You're seeing alternatives go to the marketplace. So I guess, I say all that. What's the real impact here of these government agencies, these government do-gooders out there trying to save everybody in the nanny state mentality? Like, there is real pain, right? Coming from the government getting in the way. Do we have data? Do we have anecdotes? Would you be willing to share that with us?
Right now, Zyn and nicotine pouches are they're in a decent place. The real impact right now is they're not going through the FDA approval process fast. Zyn has actually gone through, they've had 20 of their products approved by the FDA for marketing. So now they can have more influence in the United States market of nicotine and tobacco products and really work on that education, because I think that's one of the biggest issues. Like, you're talking about boomers. Every time I talk to someone that's not in like my age bracket, or honestly, like not a dude, like they don't know what Zyn is. They think it's chewing tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'll hate on chewing tobacco. Like, I think that's gross. I don't want to see someone like carrying around like a clear water bottle, like filled with spit. Like, that's what I saw in my high school. Like, and it's not that. You're not spitting with Zyn. It just sticks in your mouth and it's not gross. And so I think I have to like challenge a lot of that preconceived knowledge from them that that's not what it is. It's not gross. It's not icky. It's a totally, it looks like a piece of gum. And so you're challenging a lot of those mindsets at the federal and state levels, where they think that they have to do something to get the kids off of nicotine and tobacco, because all of the other times that they did something was just had great results, which it never did. It never did anything. It just pushed more kids into the black market. And so
sorry, I mean, interrupt. Were you ever in the DARE program growing up?
You know, I don't recall that. I remember we had Red Ribbon Week in Florida, where it's just say no to drugs, just say no. And I
same
think
church, different pew, probably. Yeah, like so for folks who maybe didn't grow up with the DARE program, it was like, you know, here's Officer Dave, and I'm going to tell you why all these drugs are dangerous and what they looked like and where you'd find them, and oh, by the way, how much they cost. And it's like, Officer Dave, I'm 12 and I never knew that these existed. Now you've put them into my purview. And the argument was, well, kids need to be educated and know what to look out for. It's like, well, you're the one informing me. You're the one putting it in front of me, saying this is what meth looks like. This is oxycodone. I'm like, Officer Dave, I don't think this is the intended outcome you were hoping for.
I remember explicitly being told in 7th grade science class in whatever health section that we had, where someone else from outside of the school came in, they told us how to make pot brownies. And I remember the boys like taking notes, and I was like, what?
The one time they paid attention in class.
Oh yeah, it was the one time they ever took notes. And I was like, why are you telling us this? Like, sure, we all had Google back then, we could look it up ourselves, but like, why are you telling us? I think a lot of times people think that the government has to make the solution and they have to fix everything, when really, like, this needs to go back to your home. Like, your parents need to talk to you. Like, if your kids are using Zyn, like, your parents need to be informed about it. They need to be having those conversations with their kids, because the government can't be watching over your kids. They can't be like having these one size fits all solutions for all the teenagers, because the teenagers listen to the government. Like, they're hardly listening to their parents. What are we going to do next? Throw them in jail for Zyn? Like, it's so silly to me that they keep trying the same thing over and over. But that's just government for you. At all levels.
You mentioned something too. Like you said, everybody had access to Google. Like, we could have looked this up if we wanted to. And I think what you're speaking to actually is maybe where the future generations are headed, and where we've seen Gen Z, especially because you guys were the first generation. Like, this little smartphone, right? Like, this became your starting off point. That you grew up where this is what everybody knew. I grew up with a flip phone. I didn't have I grew up with a brick, and then I got a flip phone. That was the upgrade in 8th grade. And that was only to have in my backpack when I needed to get picked up from like mock trial or marching band, because I was a nerd. And later in life, football, I did do the manly things. But like, you look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and speaking to the alternatives now, as a Gen Zer, I can objectively say, ugh, smoking is icky. Or, doing meth doesn't look like it's really the best health choice. So what alternatives are out there that are safer? And, oh, by the way, now I can not only find them, I can feel better educated. It's not saying there's no risk, right? That's not what we're saying here. But the fact that Gen Z now has quite literally anything in the world they could possibly want to know at the power of their hand. And, oh, by the way, let's add in this little thing called AI, where now you can go and contextualize information, right? Like, I don't know about you. I've used AI a billion times. I'm like, I have the sniffles. Oh no, what should I take? Well, Brian, here's some stuff you can do at home. And it like goes through and it lists it out, and you can dig deeper. Hey, tell me more about this remedy. Like, what should I look out for? What should I do? I'm 6'5", 269. Like, help me, make sure it's for my body type. Like, that's the stuff now that is like, that's baseline for Gen Z. Rewind back to the boomer generation, right? And I mean, you didn't know what you didn't know because you didn't know it was out there, right? You were just kind of in your own little bubble. And that's not to be insulting. That's saying the reality of the era they grew up in. You went to school, you talked to your immediate friends who were part of your immediate community. You went home, you did your chores, you watched the evening news, which there was 3 channels. You got told one narrative from one voice, and that was the truth. You read your newspaper, maybe. You went to the library where the information was by definition dated because it's in a book and it's not updated automatically, unlike the internet. So the confines of boomers, I get like the mentality, but that doesn't change that things have continued to advance. And I'm wondering how much, Sophia, and this is where I actually was going, hear me out, how much of this concern is based on the truest form of the word ignorance, right? Just the not knowing of these do-gooder, boomer, I'm going to say older Gen X folks who literally just don't know what they don't know.
I think almost all of it. I genuinely think almost all of it is ignorance, because anytime I talk to someone who roughly knows about Zyn and thinks it's gross, and once I start telling them about it, they're like, oh, I didn't know it wasn't causing cancer. I didn't know you didn't have to spit and it wasn't gross or whatever. And what really prompted me to write my last article on Zyn, which I titled, which I thought was very Gen Z of me, Combating Misinformation on Nicotine Pouches, since the Zyn wordplay is all the rage on social media.
Does it feel like your office has quietly turned into a mini call center? I mean, you didn't plan for it, but between the customer service calls, the sales follow-ups, and team check-ins, the phones are ringing nonstop. And you're stuck managing it all with a setup built for 2012. And that's what I call the accidental contact center. And it's more common than you think. Level 365 makes it easy for you to level up. You'll get call routing, full call history, real analytics without buying some massive contact center platform. It's plug-and-play simplicity for businesses that suddenly found themselves taking way more calls than expected. If that sounds like you should check out Level 365.
Was because I saw all of these just terrible anecdotal articles, and I do hyperlink them in the article. I won't say the name of the outlet. It's not real journalism.
I will.
So it's
New York
fine.
Post, New York Post, New York Post. So yeah, sorry, I'll be that guy. I'm the host.
Yeah, I was reading that, and the stories were, I was like, this isn't real reporting. These aren't real stories. It's how a mom in the UK, which, okay, that's not America, they have different laws, was with her 19-year-old son, and they did Zyn together because she wanted to try it with her son. It's like, okay, like that's being a good parent. You're experimenting. Like, I always was allowed to have like a glass of wine at dinner when I was like 18, so I could try wine and like learn my boundaries, whatever. And the mom, who was a smoker all her life, got lightheaded. And I don't know if you've ever used a nicotine pouch. Yeah, they hit kind of hard, and you do get a little lightheaded. And so if you get lightheaded, you just take it out and then you're fine. But it was funny that she was trying to use this experience as why we shouldn't have Zyn on the market and other nicotine pouches, and you need to get them off. And that's,
I mean, Sophia, it's the same thing with the oh my God, there's gonna be pot brownies in my kid's trick or treat, right? Like that. It's the same mentality.
Who's giving away their edibles? Those are expensive.
For real, those are expensive.
Sorry. That is like the funniest. Like now it's a meme because like we all know no one's getting rid of their edibles. Like you worked hard for that. But it's like I think it's the boomers are a huge problem, especially in government. But then it's the millennial parents, maybe Gen X. I don't know my generations, but I think it's a lot of millennials who are now becoming parents, and they're so risk averse. We just have a very risk averse society where they think that the solution is the government to keep us away from all bad that life can have. And if we have medical care for everyone, we can never get sick. And it's like, that is so unrealistic. And they're actually making us worse off for so many different things.
Yep.
But people need to be able to make these bad decisions. If I want to smoke a cigarette and I'm a consenting adult, why shouldn't I be able to? Why should I have to go and meet someone in a dark alley to buy a cigarette? That seems weird. I should be able to go to my corner store like usual. That seems like a very American solution to me. And I think it should be the same thing for Zyn and other nicotine pouches and Juul and other vapes. We need to have those options so we can make informed decisions and make those mistakes if we want to.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, interrupt. I'm so sorry, but like this goes to just, I think, a principle that we're starting to really starting to see hit home here. And you mentioned millennials. I am a elder millennial, well, elder-ish millennial. And I've seen this firsthand. You hit the nail on the head. Millennials are so risk adverse. And I think a lot of that goes to a lot of boomers who were our parents or older Gen X. They were in this, I'm going to say, borderline utopian mentality where we can control all the variables, right? We just won a world war. We can do all these things. We can make the world a better place. And they brought in this mentality of trust the experts, trust the science. Everybody gets a trophy. Like this is the mentality of your average millennial. And what happens is and you hit the nail on the head here. Like if you want to try a cigarette and see actually like what it does to you, right? Not only is that a real life data point for you, but it's going to be a real life data point for other people who are watching what happens. So I think back to the truth.org stuff, right? I brought that up earlier in the show. When I am a kid and here we go, nerdy Brian, I was in a chorus. I would sing, solos and stuff. I was a classically trained singer, believe it or not. I guess I still am technically, but neither here nor there. But like when I see that, am I going to smoke a cigarette to potentially destroy my vocal cords? Absolutely not. I need these bad boys. And fast forward to today, I need these bad boys. So like, I look at that. That was because I was able to base my decision off a negative consequence that somebody else experienced because of their utilizing the substance. And if you never grow up in a world where you're seeing the actual consequences, you have nothing to base it on versus just like, like rumor, or you're reading something from yesteryear and you're like, well, was that actually true? And we see this firsthand in our conversation. I'm not taking a hard left turn here, but like with the whole, the folks who are just beating the war drum, they're like, yeah, let's go to war. And I'm like, dude, you don't realize how bad war actually is. I remember when I was a kid, I won this stupid like little essay contest, and I was like in third grade, and I got to go to the local AM vets, and mind you, this is in the 90s, so there was a lot of World War II vets who were there, and I got to hear like the horrors of war. And like, mind you, these these World War II vets, they don't care if you're 90 or you're 9. They're going to tell you exactly what happened. He's like, I had a man's head. I was putting it underwater and I watched him stop shaking. And I'm like,
and you're in third grade.
Oh yeah. And your brain just blowing. You're like, what is happening here? But like, you hear the actual like horrors of war, and it will change you. Like, it will be like, oh, this isn't a good thing. Like, it's not the sexy movie I see on TV. It's actually really, really, really bad. And I'm hearing it firsthand from people who went there. Who are the loudest voices against war? It's former veterans, right? And that right there speaks to, if you don't have the ability for people to actually look at data, look at outcomes, then you're eliminating the ability for them to make a logical, rational choice based on the evidence before them. And you go back to our favorite boomer senator, Chuck Schumer. Like, he was my senator in New York State when I grew up there, right? He's nobody's favorite. I know. There's not a camera that he doesn't like. But then on the flip side, there's nobody watching him on camera who likes him. Besides himself. But I digress. When you look at somebody like a Chuck Schumer, he has always been, Sophia, he has always been this do-good politician. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to save this, this poor little turtle in this pond up in upstate New York. Like, that's been his mentality. And I guess, across the board, I'm going to frame this question to you. We see that this isn't going to go away until nature runs its course, right? And I'm not trying to be morbid, but like the reality is boomers will eventually leave the planet because life happens, right? So when that happens, that's going to obviously lead to another generation we're going to be dealing with and their issues. But like right now, Sophia, what can we do now? I know you mentioned earlier, like having a free market to be able to have these different solutions come to the table, compete in the marketplace, and actually let the best product win, not just from a cost standpoint or a value standpoint, but how about a little bit of both? And oh, by the way, a safety standpoint. So like there's that. Is it home education? Is it trying to like get government out of the way? I don't have all the answers. I'm hoping you do, Sophia. Bring us home. What are your thoughts there?
So first thing is you have to get the state governments to just stop legislating on the issue. It's the worst states that just prohibit almost all tobacco are California, Massachusetts, and even in some of their localities, they have even stricter laws. And then California's a bellwether, and they were one of the first states to pass the 21-year-old plus tobacco law, and then that goes throughout the country. So anything that they're passing is worrisome. It needs to be fought back. And that's really how I got into the anti-tobacco fight, fighting against the prohibitionists. And so just stopping those bad state laws. But a lot of the reform has to be done at the federal level. It has to be done through the FDA. So I know that they're doing good work in the FDA. I'm attending these events all the time where they're talking about how they're approving these products and how they're improving it, the approval process with AI and different regulations. And it's so complex. It's so bureaucratic. But they really have like thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of applications for products, nicotine and tobacco products that want to come to market to be approved. And to approve nicotine pouches, anything that's not a cigarette, it's so much more difficult for all of these stupid bureaucratic reasons. I can't even get into it. I'll get too angry. And it's too complex. And so the FDA has to fix their approval process to allow these harm reduction tools onto the market, because the longer they wait to approve these products, or if they go and deny these products, Congress does something stupid, whatever Chuck Schumer wants that day against Zyn, consumers are going to be less safe. So we need to have the most safe products on the market, which right now is nicotine pouches, besides gum and the patches, which aren't very popular with consumers. So even though some of the activists can be really scared that Zyn is getting really popular, it's actually a plus because consumers really like it. Mm-hmm. And it's a harm reduction tool. So they're getting off of the less safe, unregulated vapes and cigarettes for these safer alternatives. But we also need to have good consumer education. Like, I don't have a problem with the truth.com commercials. I think that's one of the reasons why I was like, oh, I'm never going to smoke because I don't want to hurt my lungs. Like I used to sing, and that was like a big thing. I use my voice all the time. So I don't want to smoke. But I think that's where like the boomers didn't have that. They just had the big tobacco ads. So I think those consumer education, commercials, ads, I think that's really helpful. And we also we really at the end of the problem is we have to get the government out of the way, because consumers have all of these tools to do the education themselves. The government is not our parents, even though they want to act like it and have all of these paternalistic policies. And so we just need to get the government out of the way and to do their job, which is to regulate, to make sure that we have safe, effective products on the market, and you're getting the unsafe, ineffective products off of the market. And the FDA has been historically pretty bad at that. But I'm hoping for some good regulations. I try to stay hopeful and positive, though I'm often disappointed. So we'll see. I'm trying to be optimistic, but I think Zyn is safe for now.
So I'll finish your thought with a quick video, because you said all the boomers grew up with was the big tobacco ads. You immediately made me think of one of my favorite shows, Family Guy, but this is old Family Guy. Here, I'll share this really quick.
They're trying to corrupt our children.
Oh, what do you expect? Those bastards turned a whole generation of Americans into smokers with their damn subliminal advertising.
Timmy, where's Lassie?
She's out in the orchard, Ma. Peaches are coming in mighty early this year.
Smoke.
You know what they say, Timmy? Early peaches, long summer.
Smoke.
What's that, Lassie?
Are you smoking yet?
Like that is exactly what the boomers grew up with. But anyways, and of course I'm a dad, so Mickey Mouse Clubhouse comes up next. Yeah, different. That's what happens when you get old, Sophia. Your YouTube algorithm gets absolutely destroyed by your 2-year-old. But how about this? Do us a favor, bring us home, Sophia. I know folks who are listening today, they got a lot of value from today's conversation. I got a lot of value from today's conversation. So I want folks to be able to go ahead, reach out to you, but also if they want to continue learning more about the work you're doing, trying to help, talk about how we can, improve our public health by creating a more free market, getting government out of the way. And when government insists on being in the way, at least, I say empower, expect and demand that government be more efficient, utilize tools like AI to make things easier. So if they want to continue reading your work, obviously give us some shout outs there. And then social media links, all that and more. Sophia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I post all of my work on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. My handle's at Sophie Hamilton, Sophie with an F. Very important. And then I post all of the articles that I write on my Substack, Sounding Off with Sophia. I talk about so many things related to healthcare outside of just tobacco. I talk about other drug issues, but also I have a long article about all of my thoughts on Make America Healthy Again, being a very crunchy hippie person. And the libertarian sphere. I have lots of interesting thoughts for you guys on my socials, so check those out at Sophie Hamilton.
Good stuff, Sophie. Sophie or Sophia? I've been calling you Sophia the entire time.
I go by both. It's confusing.
Okay, yeah, you hit me at the end, so I'll tell you a fun story. And by the way, if Patrick Chugle is listening to the show, I don't think I've ever told this on air. I did tell it off air to about 300 guests that I've had after him. If their name is at all potentially a tongue twister for yours truly, I make sure I know how to say your name. I will ask you 400 times before we hit record, because during our show, Patrick and I, God bless young podcaster Brian, I didn't realize that Patrick's name was Patrick. I thought Patrick's name was Patrick, and I called him Patrick the entire episode until the very end. After we we ended the recording, he goes, "By the way, my name is Patrick." And I just felt like this just plummeting feeling in my stomach. So Sophia, what I did afterwards, I went through, and mind you, this is before like your AI transcription tools and stuff. I listened to that entire episode, and every single spot that I said Patrick, I went through and I redubbed Patrick, or Patrick rather. I just flubbed it. Yeah. So instead of saying Patrick, I redubbed it to say Patrick. And it was probably a good like 30 times, because I like to say people's names like that's how I am. So anyways, Patrick Chugle, I want you to know that you helped make me a better person and a better host. Thank you for that. Sophia, no, this has been a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Do me a favor, stick around after the outro music goes there. I want to pick your brain a little bit afterwards, but folks, please do me a favor and go ahead, reach out to Sophia, let her know you heard her here in the Brian Nichols Show and you appreciate her insights. And also please go ahead, give her some love, give her Substack a follow, a subscribe. What do you do on Substack? You follow, you subscribe. What is it?
I'm still learning Substack. I don't get it.
There's
too many social media.
Oh, you subscribe. There we go. You subscribe. Duh, Brian. We're in a SaaS world, software as a service. It's subscription as a service. So there we go. Go ahead, give Sophia some love. And of course, when you do, again, tell her you heard her. You're on the Brian Nichols Show. Sophia, I've really enjoyed this conversation today. Any final thoughts for the audience?
The government needs to stop everything they're doing. That sums up everything, I think.
We could end my podcast just saying that. We're almost to 1,000 episodes here. I didn't think to just literally say the government should stop doing everything, just get out of the way. I wholeheartedly agree. Sophia, thank you for joining us. And with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Sophia Hamilton. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.